How are y'all doing? Sorry, how are y'all doing? Besides me splitting your ears with this microphone. So I am Ben Mangan. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Social Sector Leadership, otherwise known as CISL. I also teach here at Haas, and I'm really excited to see the room so packed. We're going to talk about the Berkeley Board Fellows program today, but I wanted to give you a little bit of context first, specifically starting about CISL. So we're one of the social impact centers here on campus, and our vision is that millions of people's lives around the world are measurably better because of the insights and the experiences that we provide to leaders like you. And we do this in a number of different ways. We do it through the classes we offer, and I want to invite you all to take the class that I teach in the spring. It's a strategy and leadership for social impact class. It's the Gateway Social Impact Strategy class here at Haas. We do it through programs. Some of them are experiential, like Social Sector Solutions, a program we run with McKinsey, which does consulting projects for nonprofits and governments and social enterprises that actually pay the center. And we also do it through the Berkeley Board Fellows program. Now, how many of you have actually served on a nonprofit board? Excellent. So for those of you who are new to boards, they sound boring, right? It's a board. It's a strange word to describe this thing, but I'm delighted to see so many of you here because they're really, really important. And I'm just going to take us up to the 20,000-foot level for a second and talk about what boards of directors for nonprofit organizations really represent and what nonprofit organizations represent in this country and in society. So these are the organizations that are really the solvers of the problems that are the hardest to solve in the world. The market doesn't solve these problems. Government doesn't solve these problems well or at all. And a lot of people, billions of people, suffer as a result of these problems going unsolved. And the people who step into the breach and take on these problems, always with fewer resources, are nonprofit organizations. And they do this in conjunction with government and in business. But they are a really significant part of the American economy and in our overall human infrastructure for making life better for all of us. And on the economic part, it is not insignificant. You know, they are responsible for 10% of American wages, 5% of American GDP. And the really, really beautiful thing about all of this is that all of this is governed. And by governed and in governance, I mean the decision rights. Who has the right to decide what to do? By groups of volunteers from communities all over the country who serve for the sake of something greater than themselves. That is what board service is about. And you have a really incredible opportunity to learn what it's like to serve as a director for an organization in service of something greater than yourself, and to do this project and to experience the good, the bad, and the ugly of nonprofit organizations and boards. So, one, I'm just absolutely delighted that so many of you are interested. Two, I cannot emphasize enough how much you must take this seriously. So this, in the true spirit of being beyond yourself, this is not for credit. And also, you know, when you submit your application for this, that is a signal of your commitment. I don't want to scare you, but like there's no backing out after that, more or less. And if you're a Haas student, you will hear from me directly if you back out. I promise you. I mean, did you hear how loud it was when I dropped that mic? And if you're not a Haas student, I will reach out to your program director at your school, and I will tell them that you dropped out of this because you are dropping out of the opportunity to help an organization that is trying to help people in need. So you must take this very seriously. I'm sort of joking around, but not really. And you'll see on the application there's an opportunity for you to actually say, in one place, right, Cathy? Like, this is the nonprofit, or these are the 3 areas that I really want to serve in, and the matching committee will do their absolute best to match you. And if you name one specific nonprofit and we can't match you, then it doesn't happen, and that's fine and that's fair. But we just want to emphasize that, you know, this is not the kind of thing that you should even apply to if you're doubting your ability to fulfill the commitment, because it's meaningful, it translates into action that actually ripples through the board and the organization in a way that benefits communities and people and society. We take it very seriously, and we ask you to do the same because we're preparing you to be one of those people who has the ability to help make decisions about how these resources, for the sake of society, these organizations, by the way, they're fueled with revenue that is totally laden with our most aspirational values. They're fueled with revenue that comes to us through taxes and also comes to us in organizations because people have made donations that are free of taxes. So it really means a lot to do this work, and we ask you to be partners in that. And today we're going to have a panel discussion, right? Yep. Cathy is going to lead with some board fellows who participated. And I'm going to turn it over to Cathy now and just thank you all once again for being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. My name is Cathy Garza, and I'm the program director at Sizzle. You'll hear that a lot if you're in the social impact space here. And I just want to say I'm really thrilled to see so many of you in the room as well, because Board Fellows really is an opportunity for you to have direct social impact in your local community. So I run programming, and Board Fellows is one of these programs. We have Ben kind of outlined all our other offerings through Sizzle, so I won't go into that. But Board Fellows gets you into social impact pretty quickly. You get to stretch your leadership skills and develop that, and we match you along with another fellow. So there are always two of you as fellows at an organization. It runs the academic year. We kick off in October, and you're doing your presentation to your board or your committee in the April-May timeframe. And you are onboarded as a board member, although you come with the non-voting characteristic because you don't have fiduciary responsibility, so you're not going to be voting with other folks on the board. And what this looks like to you is, for board service, you are attending those board meetings, and you'll probably be assigned to a committee depending on the project that you get assigned. The board meetings come with agenda packets. We expect you, and they're going to expect you, to do the board of directors duties of coming to the meeting prepared, reading that agenda packet, understanding what's going to be discussed during that time, and just being prepared. And like I said, you will be participating. Some boards are more friendly to your participation in the conversation around the table. That you'll have to pick up on with your board mentor. You'll have a board mentor who can they'll be the ones onboarding you and giving you the culture of the organization. But everyone at the nonprofit will know you're joining them, and they have agreed to welcome you onto their board. You will have a project that you'll work on with your fellow, and that helps get you more exposure to the work of the organization. And it's also very important to the organization. It's how you are really helping them create social impact and deepening their work with their beneficiaries. These projects fall into some buckets. They're generally the financial management, business strategy and planning, performance measurement, assessment, and marketing. Those are kind of the rough buckets, and we'll talk a little bit more about these projects and samples of them. Your participation in the program and to apply and to be selected, you must attend the kickoff. That's the first opportunity for you to meet with your nonprofit. We all come together, you meet, you kind of lay out the rules of the road of how you're going to work together, whether you're going to meet monthly, by phone. You'll develop your scope and what the project looks like at that meeting, at the kickoff. Shortly after that, you'll continue to be in conversation with your nonprofit, and you'll refine that scope. There's always the possibility of scope creep, and we're trying to minimize that. What I've told the nonprofits who have applied, just so you know, is that the fellows are not interns, right? You're not expected to be there every Wednesday and Friday from 3 to 5. This is a extracurricular activity on your part. The way I kind of pose it to them is, if you're at your strategic planning meeting and you've developed a list of like 4 or 5 things that you want your organization to accomplish in the next year, but you really only have the bandwidth to do like the top 3, consider the fellows as help to get that 4th one going. You're expected, or what I've set their expectation to is that you'll avail yourself of 8 hours a month on average. That kind of, and we'll hear from the students later on, but my experience has been that it's a little lighter in the fall as you get to know the organization, get to understand what the project really is, and then it does get a little heavier in the spring as the work on the project really gets going and the presentation deadline comes up, that you end up spending a little bit more time. So that's scope refinement. That was a little bit of a scope creep too, wasn't it? And then there's training that we do for you in November. It's late November when we come back together, and we time it that way so that in hopes that you will have time to have attended one board meeting. So you kind of have a lay of the land of what a board meeting is for all of those of you who haven't had that exposure. We'll do project check-ins in the spring, right after the December break, and then we come together in April for a finale as a community to kind of share what we've learned and talk about our experiences. So I get a lot of questions about, well, what are these projects? And they really are, they run the gamut. These are some samples of past projects. I'll leave this up here for a while, but what I find is that organizations really seek help in figuring out if the programs that they run are the right programs, or how much they're really costing them, if they're serving the beneficiaries that they think they should be. So there's projects tend to involve surveying. There's a lot of surveys that go on and analysis of those surveys. There's a lot of financial analysis. For example, if an organization has a program for youth, an after-school program, is it really meeting the needs of the targeted population, or and how much is it costing them? How much is the help, and all of that sort of analysis for the ultimate goal for many of these projects is providing data to the organization that helps them then go speak to their donors and to their grantors. So a lot of this rolls up into what gets published in their annual report, that sort of thing. So the other bucket of questions I get is about matching and how it's done. We ask that you really take the time to answer the questions on the application. It does take a little bit of time to go through it, I'll admit to that. And one of the questions we ask is to tell us about what a good match to you looks like. So we ask that you specify, if possible, the nonprofit. So on our website, we go into excruciating detail about the program, and on the page that is for students, we have a bullet point about the board projects. There's a link to a list of this year's nonprofit applicants with the relevant information about matching. So they've listed their meeting dates and times, how they see working with fellows this year. So it gives you a sense of what kind of project they're going to expect of you, so that you can see if that interests you. And of course, it also lets you know if what industry they serve. So if it's arts and culture, or education, youth, that sort of thing. So take all that information in and tell us which organizations you prefer. Say that my top 3 are X, Y, and Z, or I'll take anything in education, or I'll take anything in San Francisco, or I'll take anything. I just really want to be on a board. So that's important information to us. Those are the ones that get matched most quickly. And to Ben's point about, if you submit an application, that means you want to be matched. You will be matched, or you are in the pool of being matched. And if we match you, you can't back out. Again, because you are paired and because we have this relationship with our community here. And so if it's very important, you only have an interest in one organization, tell us that too. Say if I can't get matched to the YMCA, then I have no other organization I'm interested in. And that's helpful information too. To the point about telling us if you're interested in an area like arts and culture or youth, I would strongly recommend you do read the section in the application or the sheet on our website of the nonprofit applicants of what they're looking for in a student or what the project is going to be, because the YMCA, for example, applied. They're going to take 4 fellows this year, and they have 2 very distinct projects. So you would think, oh, the YMCA, they work with youth. But one of their projects is they want to build a building, and so they're more interested in people who come with some real estate experience or some financial analysis experience. So, it's a good reminder to read what the organizations have filled out on their application. The matching committee is made up of your cohorts. We take a couple of students from each cohort from the MBA class, the full-time MBA class. We have some evening weekend students. We have some students from outside the campus area, some public policy MDPs. We do consider your passion, your skill set, and the logistics. For example, if you say you want to work for the YMCA, but they meet on Tuesday nights and you have a Tuesday class, we can't match you to that, and that's one of the questions. What days are you not available? Days and times. We're going to announce the matches on September 18th. We do allow for some switching, but it is a switching that is, you have to find the fellows that you will switch with. We don't do that on a random basis. So it's a one-for-one switch. And again, we pair you with someone else, and it'll be someone else in a similar program. So in other words, if you're a full-time student, it'll be a full-time student, but it could be from a different department. We place professional students, the evening weekend, and the MPAs together since they have different schedules. This is what your program year looks like if you're a fellow. Again, the kickoff on the 1st, that's here on campus. You'll be doing your scope development that first part of October, and you submit your scope to both the center and to your board mentor on the 15th. We come back together for training on the 29th of November. And then in 2019, I'll be in touch with you shortly after you come back from your December break on how you're doing on your program or your project. And April 10th is our program finale, and then you're delivering your project to your board sometime in the April-May timeframe. So these are the hard and fast dates. We are always available, the CISL staff, we have faculty. Don't hesitate these aren't your only touch points with us, in other words. Feel free to contact us because we're around and we all have nonprofit board experience. So with that, I'll take questions about the program at large if you have any. Otherwise, we can jump right into talking to students and getting the lay of the land from the students. Anybody have any general? Yes, and you know what? I'm gonna walk to you because we're recording this for everybody who couldn't be here.
Thank you. I had a question about the program term. Is it only available for the first years in the first year, or can we apply for it in the second year as well for different nonprofits?
I think this is on, yeah? Okay, the program is available to first and second years. So that's your question. But are you saying, is it available to both, or can you do it twice?
Can we do it twice? Or can we choose when to do it, maybe?
You could choose when to do it. I would say I would look to someone who hasn't done it before I choose someone who's doing it a second time. There are going to be 40 slots for students this year. Last year we had 101 applicants. So.
Thank you.
has it ever happened in the past where organizations have a great experience with their board fellow and they ask them to stay on a second year?
That I haven't had them stay on a second year, but I've had them asked to join the board. We have quite a bit, although there have been some who just stay on their own. But in terms of to fellow again, no, that we try to encourage them to take others. Yes, this is going to be, this is interesting. No, I'm just kidding.
If you're not matched or you don't find a match that you like, I guess, are there other opportunities through CISL to join boards?
Mark, can you get his mic, please? Yes, we can always connect you with boards. In fact, one of them is from Sonoma this year, and I just said, I don't think any of our students are going to want to go to Sonoma, but I'll put it out there. No, we do have connections to other boards. We can talk about that. There's also an organization in the city called Volunteer Match that they every year in March they rent a ballroom in a hotel in San Francisco, and it's like a speed dating for nonprofits and those who want to be on boards. That's another opportunity that we offer up to you guys to meet other nonprofits to serve on boards. Anybody else? All right, let's get the alumni up here and have some questions from the students. I'm sure we're going to have many. So we have Sandra, who is a second-year full-time MBA. She was at Cancer Care Point, and she was on the matching committee. So she's a great person to ask questions about that. If you have any questions about what happens behind the black box. So Robbie is an MDP student who, were you matched with a? Yeah, but were you matched with another MDP or? Public policy, okay, so great. 2 out of, if there are any students not from Haas, that might be helpful to you. And Kevin was at the Bread Project, which is an interesting organization because it's a nonprofit, but they have a line of business. They, in workforce development, they're teaching hard to employ people, how to be a baker, how to run the business, that sort of thing, and second year MBA as well. So I have a few questions to start off. And that is, if each of you could tell me how the board fellows met or exceeded your expectations, and then maybe something about what surprised you about the program.
Okay, great. So I guess what surprised me, or actually, what was the most impactful moment or best moment for me? Met my expectations. I would say there were a lot of things. My partner was amazing. The organization was great to work for, and my mentors were really good about keeping the scope creep to a minimum, which is very appreciated. But I think it was, the Bread Project had, they do this. They have a baking program that usually lasts about 12 weeks, and we were actually invited to one of the graduations. So they usually a cohort about 4 to 5 folks who, again, are folks who have difficulties finding employment for a variety, have barriers to employment for a variety of reasons, whether formerly incarcerated or other factors, and just kind of seeing firsthand them sharing how much the graduation meant to them. Like a lot of them mentioned, like I didn't graduate high school. This is the proudest moment I've ever had in my life. Like that kind of impact was like really powerful to witness, and I think that was one of the moments where I was very appreciative of that opportunity to kind of indirectly contribute to that person. So.
Okay, hi everyone. I was matched with Mission Neighborhood Centers in San Francisco, and they work with community development in the local area, in the mission area. What surprised me? What met my expectations? I was expecting that I'll work on an interesting project and the team would be cooperative and they would be available for us, and that was the case. The executive director of the nonprofit was extremely involved with us, and it was really nice that every single time we took an initiative, they responded very positively, and they were very much on board. We used to have weekly check-ins on phone, and they were really available for that kind of thing. So mentorship was there, really welcoming environment, and the project was really interesting. What surprised me, that despite all our efforts to, narrow down our scope, somewhere in February, we had to change things, and we were just, both me and Anna, my partner, we were really surprised that, we sort of kept everything on track. We were continuously checking with everyone what's going on, and we were updating you what we are doing. But despite that, some changes happened within the organization. They hired someone who were doing exactly what we were doing, and so that was kind of a turmoil, but again, they were cooperative and we were available, so it just worked out well. So yeah.
Hi, everybody. So I worked with Cancer Care Point, and I chose this organization because the cause is very near and dear to me. And despite what Cathy told me about commuting to San Jose, which is not exactly close, what met my expectations was how helpful the board was, and they were very welcoming. They just gave us so much of their time, and getting involved with learning more about the patients in the area, in particular in Silicon Valley and in California in general. So this is something, as I said, that is of personal interest to me, so I was happy to be researching it further and learning about real life cases. What exceeded my expectations is the mentor we had. So the mentor we had, Victor, is a Haas alum. He was very supportive, and I'm still in contact with him up till now, so I end up having a real life mentor out of this experience alone. And yes, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm too short. I can't see beyond those, so. So yeah, it's been a very positive experience overall, and I'd love to talk more about it one-on-one if you care.
So let's have it. Ask those questions. Go up the stage. I won't take it personally. Go ahead, Mr. Santa. I'll repeat your. Could you repeat the question because we're being recorded? Are you all planning to go into the social sector?
Are we all planning to go into the social sector?
I can answer that. Yes, a resounding yes. That is always the plan. And my program is development practice. It's essentially an interdisciplinary program where it's all about social development. So yes, and that was one of my intention to, in fact, get into Berkeley Board Fellows. I wanted to get an idea about how the nonprofit sector works and functions in the US. I'm from India, so I had a lot of contextual understanding of India, but not of the US. So yeah, yes.
No. I wasn't planning to enter into the social sector professionally at least. So it's been something that interests me always sort of on the side and as an extracurricular. Even before coming to business school, I was part of an organization that works on hunger alleviation, which is another cause I care about. I just didn't plan, and I don't think I do plan to be in the social sector anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a no for me as well, just because I have my own career aspirations of moving into the food industry. But I think this was great exposure for me, who had done volunteer work before but had never been, wanted to drive more impact. And I think this was a really great way of kind of doing that. And I think I could see myself like joining a board and kind of helping there. But I wouldn't, for me personally, my career aspirations are not tied to the social sector. What would you say was your critical value add to the organization? I guess I can go. I think for us, it was really bringing an outside perspective. So the project that I was working on for the bread project that Cathy alluded to earlier was that the way the organization works is like their main program is this baking training program, but they also have social enterprise attached to that kind of helps feed the mission, right? And so they'll have like they do a lot of co-packing with other restaurants. Like they'll do baking on the side. And so the project was about could we actually sell the baked goods that we make for the program, or figure out a way to kind of sell that in stores and actually use that to funnel the mission. So for me, I was someone who would come from, I came from tech. I was at LinkedIn and I did sales ops there. And so I kind of had that kind of financial business planning experience that I could kind of bring in and kind of help. Ultimately, what we ended up doing was we had a pivot, but it was really us kind of level setting with them and saying like, hey, like I think this is not necessarily the right approach for you at this current stage of your business. And they were super receptive to that kind of stuff. And so it was, it was kind of my experience, but also kind of helping to reshape where we thought would be best use of our time. That was, I think, the critical value add for them.
For us, so the MNC, the organization that I was part of, the most of their funding comes from the government, like 95% of their funding comes from government, and our project was to help them diversify their donor base. And we added value, we think we added value in two ways. One, we prepared the action plan for them, like before action plan, we prepared a donor pipeline for them, that what would this pipeline infrastructure look like, and what is the action plan that you would need. A lot of information, they are the ones who provided, and they knew a lot more than us about what should be done. It's just that we came in and structured that information and put it in one place and said that, you know what, this is how it's gonna work out, and you guys got it, let's just do it. And the second was, who is gonna execute that plan, right? And the organization didn't have a full-time person doing their fundraising, and the main apprehension from their end was financial status, allocating financial resources for fundraising, right? So we prepared a financial model for them, giving them an estimation of 3 scenarios. Best scenario, if you have a full-time team with 4 members working as your development team. And then the not so good scenario and the worst scenario. And we provided them with estimates that if you put in so much XYZ resources, what is it in each scenario that you're gonna get. So I think giving them tangible plan of action and giving them an estimate to help them visualize what would our financial health look like if we go ahead with any of the action plan we provided, I think that was a value add.
For us, so my fellow Zisha and I were assigned initially to a marketing strategy project, which is very broad. So they didn't have a marketing person, and they brought us in to figure out how to increase their patient base. Because, I mean, they're a nonprofit, they offer free services, and they weren't able to get enough patients in, which sucks. So they got in someone to develop the fundraising, so they were doing really well on that. And we were just, as I said, responsible for marketing in general. So what we did is to narrow down the scope, and we eventually, towards maybe midway through the project, we decided to increase their online exposure. So the whole project turned out into increasing their social media presence and just making sure they have more traffic to their website. And this is something they didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to do. And we ended up giving them an execution plan, so they were able to go ahead and execute it right away as soon as we delivered our final presentation.
So you mentioned you gave me the execution plan, and this has kind of been a theme. Have you been able to keep in touch with the organizations and see what came of the work?
Yes, for us we did. So we're still in touch with them now. And we know that the people we put them in contact with have been contacted. I stalk people on LinkedIn. So that's we got a lot done that way. So you asked if the execution plans were being carried out and if we followed up with our organizations. So yes, just to continue with my answer, they're executing on it as much as they can now with the resources they have, because some of our recommendations also included paid ads, for example, and this is something that they're not allocating budget to right away. So depends how much they're getting done.
Yeah, I think Anna and I might be doing that separately. Anna is graduated now, my partner, and she was considering joining the board, so she might be in touch with them that way. I'm going to write them about a different thing, not the execution plan that we gave them, but I feel we missed an opportunity of doing a design thinking workshop with them, which I did over summer with other organizations, and I realized that, oh, this would have been amazing for MNC. So I'm putting a plan together specifically for MNC. I'll talk to the executive director I'll send that to him as a proposal that would you consider, we can do this in our organization, and hopefully this is going to result in something that would add value to the donor pipeline that we were proposing. So yeah.
Yeah, us as well. So what we did is we pivoted from, we had this question of, is there a sustainable business model that can actually support the social enterprise? In February, we said no, not at your current state. Biggest thing for you is you actually have to build your brand. How much of Berkeley and the local Bay Area community actually knows you and is aware of the services and what you can provide. So we turned that into basically a marketing plan and a branding analysis for them to kind of say, this is kind of where you need to be. These are kind of steps that you can take towards that. And so presented that to them. We just got an email a couple of weeks ago from one of our mentors and who reached out and said, like, hey, these are things that we've started to take into consideration and starting to act on, more just like a check-in. And both of us have made ourselves available to them to kind of answer any questions in the meantime. And they're also considering creating kind of like a junior board and express it. And we both expressed interest in joining, so we're still staying in touch. But yeah.
I just want to add that every year we have about a 30% return rate of nonprofits, and I've been asked, well, why isn't it higher? And it's mostly because organizations will say, well, we got a plan and we need time. We need to take the time to implement it. So we hear that. I hear that a lot.
So any examples of partnerships that went poorly, if we had any examples, and why? I can't think of one. Maybe Cathy has more.
I definitely have some. It's time commitment. Not a lot. What I hear from students is, especially if you're GSIing a class, and there seems to be like the Econ 1 class, so MPP students GSI this Econ 1 class, and that takes an enormous amount of time, evidently, and so that has become problematic. So put that down in your application. The other thing is, are the nonprofits ready for you? And we have, we're going into our 15th year with Berkeley Board Fellows. We learn something every year. We're always iterating this program. And I'm trying to find the levers to tell me what tells me that an organization is ready to host you, because it does take time. It takes your time, but it takes the organization's time. And I think, I'm getting there, and I think we have a good handle on it. But like you said, your project changed so late in the game because there's personnel turnover that happens, but one of the questions I ask is I have them tell me if there are going to be big changes in the organization and specify what they are, because I find that if there are, like if the executive director is turning over, that's usually not a good time to have fellows join the board. But it's time. Students are very enthusiastic at this time of year. And once you get into the club action and the social action and interviewing for jobs, your time becomes very compressed, and the first thing to go seems to be a class, or not a class, but a program where you're not getting a grade. So think about that. Think about that. It's tempting to drop as you're going along, but it is a full year program.
I would just add on the same thing. I think our partnerships, both me and my partner and us with the organization, went pretty well. But during the networking events, we did hear things around, oh, well, yeah, the organization is not, they're not giving us time to meet. And my partner and I have not been able to align our schedules. So for the time part, just a pro tip from our team, I would say, is block a calendar the moment you get selected in the program. And first 3 months, it's going to be very, very light. You're just going to read on your own, just get in touch with the organization briefly. But once you get the hang of the project and once you get the scope, block calendar block time in your calendar and get time with them. I think my experience and Anna's experience was that they might forget about you, but the moment you take initiative, they're there. And it's totally on you what you get out of the project and what you add what value do you add, because they're running a full-time organization and you're not full-time, you're not even continuously involved with them, you're showing once in a while. So just make sure that you show up and you keep sending them initiatives that, hey, this is what we read about, this is what our thoughts are, what do you think about it? Even if they don't reply, it registers in their mind. And that's what, for us, when they hired someone for doing exactly what we were doing, they actually forgot to tell us. But it's just that we had weekly check-ins with them. And we just updated the person that, hey, this is where we're heading. And then she said, oh, well, I think you should talk to this person and you'll be able to help them. So it's totally your initiative driven. So block your calendar, request them to block half an hour for you in their calendar, and it just works out properly. I would think so.
If your project changes while yours did during the program, it's not getting more question. Then what happens to the expectations? You still have to deliver a fully new project in 2 months, you only have 2 months left. Is it assist with figuring out something else?
In our case, we had a conversation with the executive director, and we only reduced one deliverable from our side. And they wanted, the person who they had hired wanted us to do something else. So for example, the person that they hired, she said, maybe you should prepare a list of potential donors for us. And Anna and I thought about it, and we just communicated to them that that's not possible. We are already halfway through what we were doing, and doing this would totally derail us from what we have planned. And the executive director totally got us, and he said, yeah, you're fine, whatever you're doing, stick with it and take the person's help. So it just, active communication helped us, and we just, we just reduced one deliverable, that's it, modified one deliverable, I would say.
I would say go with your intuition, and be very open and honest with your mentors. For us, we kind of saw in a few months, around November time, we kind of knew hey, this is not where we should be focusing our time. And we actually initiated the check-in, the midpoint check-in ourselves, and said hey, actually this would be a good chance we've gathered some data, let's chat. And we actually presented hey, I don't think this should be our focus anymore. This is what we present, and we think where we should spend the last few months of our time. They were extremely receptive to it. I think for us, we found the board to really appreciate our time, for one, and they were really understanding of hey, your students, it's finals week or whatever, you need to take care of what you need to take care of. They were very open about that kind of stuff. And for us, towards the end, we almost overpromise. They were even if you just do 2 of the 4, that's great. Thank you so much. And for us, it was no, we want to be able to give them something that we thought we could actually accomplish and be proud of. And it just required us to be really open and honest with them.
+1.
Yeah, we had a similar experience. So, sorry, houseboats. Yeah, so with our board, we really narrowed down the scope. So as I said, a marketing strategy is too broad for us to just come up with everything they need to do over the course of the organization's life. So looking at just their online presence and increasing their exposure, we really helped them focus on an area that they weren't focusing on, mainly because their target base is probably not millennials, so they didn't think of going to social media first. But this is where we added the value from our own experiences, and they were very appreciative of already the time we put into being at the board meeting first, and second, meeting with our mentors on a regular basis. So we were also proactive about it, as in we came back after the winter break, and we said, okay, this is probably not going to work if we just keep focusing on everything all together. So we proposed 3 topics, and they went with the exposure one. And our mentor was very happy to keep meeting with us on a weekly basis, and we would have calls with them because he's not exactly available to just meet us in person. And they also brought in another person who sits on the board to help us out with the project. So it ended up being teamwork along with people from their side. I say it was a very positive experience.
I would just say that it won't come out of the blue if there are changes. It will become obvious as you're working through and communicating and figuring out. That's what the scope refinement continues on in the fall, and it's really the spring when you kind of get going on the project. So I've never heard of it coming out of the blue. You see it developing as you're going along. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi. I was wondering, how would you go about developing, or identifying which skills you want to develop for future nonprofit work, and then identifying match preferences that might kind of give you those skills?
Should I take it? So the question is, how do you want to go about identifying what skill do you want to develop as you become part of this program, and how do you use that knowledge in finding your match? For me, before skill, it was my interest area. So my interest area is community-driven development. So that was my prime factor in identifying which project would I want to be part of. And in the spreadsheet that I think they offered us, there was a section about the project and the keywords describing the project, like hashtags for labeling the project, if I remember it correctly. And I knew that I do not want to get into financial management. I knew what I did not want to get into. And that sort of narrowed down what I would like to be part of. And as you see those labels, you figure out, oh yeah, I'm really good at this, but I think I want to work on this. So I think those labels sort of help. And it's typical MBA labels, that marketing, whatever. So it's right there.
I say I focused on the scheduling first. So after I looked at which organizations would actually let me work on a cause I care about, I looked at the schedule. This is the first logistical issue you would have. Just make sure you can attend the board meeting. You might not be able to attend all of them. For example, when I had a final, I had to cancel. So make sure you're free during the board meeting. My board meetings were not every Thursday, but the Thursdays 7 to 9 in San Jose. So I had to leave Berkeley at around 3 or 4. Don't go to San Jose. And you warned me, I know. And make sure you don't have classes during those times. And usually board meetings are once a month or once every 2 months, depends on your organization. And other than that, the skills you would develop would really depend on how much you put in. So how interested you would be in attending this board meeting and how many questions you ask, because they're very welcoming. They understand we're students. They know we're MBAs. They think we're smart, maybe. And they're really looking to help you in whatever way they can. So I would say just benefit from even the networking that would happen during those board meetings. I mean, people who are on those boards are pretty high up. So I recommend it.
Yeah, +1 to that. Yeah, I think for me it was, with me focusing on a career in food post MBA, I was definitely looking for an organization that was kind of working in that space. And so that was my number one for why I wanted to do it, was I want to work for an organization that I could see myself doing long term. And then it was just I tried my best to match it with what I could bring to the board, but also what I wanted to learn. And one thing that you can think about too is that you will for sure be paired with someone else, and you can always lean on each other for experiences. And so for MBAs, you'll probably match with another MBA, and so you'll probably have the matching committee did a great job last year of just ensuring that we had pretty complementary skills. So don't feel like you have to, if you want to go for this, but you have no marketing experience, don't feel but you have the passion for it, pick that one, or vocalize that.
I don't mean to contradict you, but this is a two-way street. We serve both our nonprofit community. We are about creating social impact. So we are looking for someone, one of the fellows, to have the skill set necessary for the project. So it's not only about development of your own skills. It is, what do you bring to the table that can help the organization deepen their impact in the community and with their beneficiaries? So I'm looking, and we're looking at both parties. All right, I think we have enough time for one more question. Anybody else? Yes?
Don't wear formals. Don't wear formals.
Don't wear formals.
Forget it.
What did
Formals.
The
Anyway.
question was, what did you learn most about how a board operates? I think for me, it was business development. That's like the biggest thing. A lot of them have fiduciary duty to donate to the nonprofit, but they also are, a lot of them are trying to activate their own networks to kind of build fundraising and kind of keep their nonprofits sustainable. So I think that was a big focus, at least from my experience.
For us, it was, we figured out that board training is a very integral to board, like contribution of board to the nonprofit. Our board members were part of the community. They came from the community and they were actively participating in the board, but that does not mean that they have all that it takes to be, active in contributing to the nonprofit. So board training is really critical, and that was also part of our suggestion. And they were very open to it. They said that we need a lot of board training. So identifying in what all areas does your board needs training is pretty interesting and critical.
What we learned from this board, at least what I learned from this experience, is that nonprofit boards operate much differently than corporate boards in terms of the interests of the board members. So it was great to see how board members for nonprofits are there because this is a cause they care about. They're dedicating their time into it. They're dedicating their money into it because they donate as well. And they really care about the community and what they're doing. So this was my biggest takeaway.
All right, we're at time. I want to be respectful of your time. So we'll hang around if you have other questions, but applications are due on Sunday. So if you're thinking about it, you can get to it on our website. Thanks for coming.